say concerning how to deal with Iran?
Well, we get along very well, and I will tell you that I think we have great respect for each other.
Can you give us a leader or solution?
Go ahead, what?
Mr. President, can you give us a sense of what de-escalate the situation between Iran and Israel?
Well, I hope there's going to be a deal. I think it's time for a deal, and we'll see what happens. But sometimes they have to fight it out, but we're going to see what happens. I think there's a good chance there'll be a deal.
Our Incident and Emergency Center has been up and running 24/7 from the start, ascertaining the status of Iran's nuclear facilities and the level of radiation at relevant sites through constant communication with Iranian authorities. The IAEA is ready to respond to any nuclear or radiological emergency within an hour. Based on the information available to the IAEA, the following is the current situation at Iran's nuclear sites. There has been no additional damage at the Natanz fuel enrichment plant site since the Friday attack, which destroyed the above-ground part of the pilot fuel enrichment plant, one of the plants at which Iran was producing uranium enriched up to 60% U-235. Electricity infrastructure at the facility, which included an electrical substation, a main electric power supply building, an emergency power supply, and backup generators, was also destroyed. There has been no indication of a physical attack on the underground cascade hall containing part of the pilot fuel enrichment plant and the main fuel enrichment plant. However, the loss of power to the cascade hall may have damaged the centrifuges located there. The level of radioactivity outside the Natanz site has remained unchanged and at normal levels, indicating no external radiological impact to the population or the environment from this event. Considering the type of nuclear material at this facility, it is possible that uranium isotopes contained in uranium hexafluoride, uranyl fluoride, and hydrogen fluoride are dispersed inside the facility. The radiation, primarily consisting of alpha particles, poses a significant danger if uranium is inhaled or ingested. The main concern inside the facility is the chemical toxicity of the uranium hexafluoride and the fluoride compounds generated at the contact with water. As in Natanz, off-site radiation levels remain unchanged. I acknowledge the cooperation and exchange of information between the Iranian authorities and the IAEA. Amid these challenging and complex circumstances, it is crucial that the IAEA receives timely and regular technical information about the facilities and their respective sites.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all, whether you're watching the stream on YouTube, on Rumble, or on Ganjing World. Yesterday's stream went viral, so I'm very thankful for all of you who watched yesterday's stream about Iran's military strategy in West Asia vis-a-vis Israel and the United States. And we have spoken about the errors done by Iran in order to, for the sake of reestablishing deterrence. And today's episode is going to be more about the strategy of the United States and Israel against Iran in order to achieve a regime change, not only to denuclearize the nuclear infrastructure of Iran, but also to completely annihilate the political system and install a puppet government just like they did in Syria. We have heard many times in the past few years. For example, we heard after the successful coup in Ukraine, that the Western powers, the European powers, are interested in a diplomatic solution for the crisis and the tensions between Ukraine and Russia. Therefore, the Europeans and the Americans have sponsored Minsk Agreement 1 and Minsk Agreement 2. And they said that the only way forward is diplomacy, but they used diplomacy as a smokescreen, as an opportunity to buy time in order to arm Ukraine and prepare it for an armed conflict against Russia. They have done similar agreement with Syria. For example, the Astana agreements or Astana Accords, which were sponsored by Russia, Turkey, and Iran. And Turkey was the middleman between the West and these powers, specifically Syria, Iran, and Russia. And those agreements in Astana 1 and Astana 2, and which became prolonged talks between the Syrian side and the rest of the local and regional powers, they were used again as an opportunity to create a status quo in Idlib and in northern Syria, and arm and equip and prepare the proxy forces or the so-called insurgents there, led by Al-Qaeda, led by Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, which later they unleashed against Syria in November 2024, and this led into a regime change operation. More recently, when Russia has proven in the hot conflict with NATO, the proxy conflict, let's say, with NATO on the Ukrainian territory, that it is difficult to push the Russian forces out of Ukraine, and that the narrative Ukraine will emerge victorious is basically a fallacy, and it's not going to be materialized. Therefore, the Americans came and presented themselves as a mediator, as a peace broker between Russia and Ukraine, and they said they want peace in Ukraine, but at the same time, they have urged their European allies in the European continent to accelerate the arms production and to militarize themselves and spend more on the defense budget and send more weapons to Ukraine, because the United States has to focus on China, has to focus on Iran in this particular case. So I also believe that this allegation from the Trump administration that they are in favor of peace in Russia is nothing but a smoke screen. They don't want peace agreement in Ukraine as well. They want their European partners to take over the file. Meanwhile, they focus on other important issues such as China and Iran. Now, in the same context, the Trump administration now says or said that they are not in favor of a military operation against Iran, and they have urged the Israelis not to take a military action. But once the attacks happened, they have confessed and said that this military operation and the destruction of some of the nuclear facilities, on the ground facilities, not the under the ground facilities, and the destruction of some of the ports and assassinations happened in Iran were planned 8 months ago, which means that while the Americans persuaded the Iranians to come to Oman for talks, Witkoff and others kept sending positive signals that the talks are going well and soon they could reach an agreement, but they used this as, again, an opportunity to plan for war against Iran. Now, only today and only yesterday, the Trump administration makes another wild claim. And this time, what they do basically is they send these carrots, these media materials to the press, and the press starts creating narratives. And in this case, they use Reuters and Associated Press to create a new narrative, a new smokescreen, and that is Trump vetoed Israeli plan to kill Iran's supreme leader. In yesterday's stream, I told you that the ultimate goal is the assassination of the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, in order to crumble the regime, because the goal is not only the nuclear reactors or the nuclear enrichment, but rather regime change. And in order to do regime change, first of all, you need for the head of this system to be eliminated. And before that, we also have a complete picture, like, let's say, more or less, about what preceded this, and that was the quote-unquote helicopter crash of the former president Raisi, who was supposed to be the successor of Ali Khamenei. So it seems that Iran was preparing Raisi to become the new supreme leader of Iran, but he was killed or he died in a helicopter crash. And after that, Ali Khamenei, it seems at the current moment, they don't have a successor or someone fit for this position yet. So they are in a really dangerous situation. If they kill him, then the image and the person who represents the idol of the revolution in Iran would be eliminated, and this would have severe consequences on the political system itself. So I believe that this is the plan. The plan is to kill Ali Khamenei. And now, because that is the plan, now they are playing another game with Iran, and this time, again, with different it's a different narrative, but a similar strategy. And that is Trump doesn't want Israel to kill Ali Khamenei. Israelis want to do that, but he is stopping them because he has a good heart and he believes in diplomacy. So better come to the negotiation table and better surrender and give up your nuclear program, because the alternative is maybe we cannot really stop Israel in assassinating Ali Khamenei. So in this case, Donald Trump allegedly vetoed an Israeli plan in recent days to kill Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei, according to US officials who spoke with Reuters. They say, quote, "Have the Iranians killed an American yet? No. Until they do, we are not even talking about going after the political leadership," said one of the sources, who is a senior US administration official. The officials, speaking on condition of anonymity, said top US officials have been in constant communication with Israeli officials in the days since Israel launched a massive attack on Iran in a bid to halt its nuclear program. They said the Israelis reported that they had an opportunity to kill the top Iranian leader, but Trump waved them off of the plan. When asked about Reuters report, Netanyahu, in an interview on Sunday with Fox News channel, said, "I can tell you, I think that we do what we need to do." So he says, I think that we do what we need to do. We will do what we need to do. And I think the United States knows what is good for the United States, which means he's basically saying, yes, we will do whatever is necessary to crumble the Iranian government in this case, even if that includes the assassination of Ali Khamenei, because the Americans know what is best for the Americans. What he's basically saying, there are no differences between us and the United States, and we are acting organically in the same direction for the same goal. Maybe we disagree on some of the steps, some of the tactiques conducted during the war or before the war, but if a war erupts, if there is a strategic conflict in the region, then the US and Israel will be in the same side, and they will completely eliminate all the differences between each other for the sake of the greater strategy, and that is an absolute hegemony and dominance over the Middle East. Now, as Association Press also received the similar script from the Trump administration, and they started saying things like, they're trying to portray Trump as a peace administration. So they say the Trump administration is desperate to keep Israel's military operation aimed at decapitating Iran's nuclear program from exploding into an even more expansive conflict, and saw the plan to kill Khamenei as a move that would inflame the conflict and potentially destabilize the region. So the Trump administration is desperate. They're begging Israel. They're telling them, please don't do it. If you do that, this could expand and there would be a regional war. So they're playing here a good cop and bad cop, basically, strategy against Iran. And I'm not sure if the Iranians are really. I don't want to say if they're aware of it or not, but I don't know if they're taking precautions against this. Netanyahu's spokesperson, however, he later called these reports completely fake news. And Netanyahu, however, in Fox News, he's also basically said that regime change could certainly be the result of this conflict because the Iranian regime is very weak, according to him. Now, the Association Press continues with creating a narrative, basically, for the people, selling the people an illusion that there is a divide in the Trump administration about how far the president should go in backing Israel. Now, we have influential people in the United States who supported Trump. They're opposing Trump's escalation and Israel's escalation in the region, and they say, let Israel fight its own wars and we don't want to get involved in this war, right? One of these people is Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, and also Charlie Kirk and Tucker Carlson are among prominent backers of Trump who have argued that voters supported Trump because he would not involve the nation in foreign conflicts. Now, we have Rand Paul, however, he praised Trump for having shown restraint and said he hoped the president's instincts would prevail. Those are all narrative, those are manipulations from American official like Rand Paul, as if he doesn't know that Trump is completely in this conflict against Iran. Like they're trying to portray him like he is a peacemaker, he's a deal maker, he is this peace bird, you know, like he's there to restrain Israel. He's the one who may make a deal with Iran in order for the sake of the peace. But when Trump comes and presents a deal to Iran with what they do is basically they go into indirect talks, and Witkoff says talks are proceeding well and the Iranians are showing flexibility because Iranians do not want war with the United States and Iran, with Israel. And they are not suicidal to go into war against two nuclear powers. And therefore, what the Americans do basically, they talk to the Iranians, and when the Iranians show flexibility and goodwill, they start increasing the demands. And what they do basically, in order to sabotage the talks, they throw an impossible demand on the table, well knowing that the Iranians will reject. For example, zero enrichment. And zero enrichment means that Iran, not even 3% enrichment, which means Iran cannot feed electricity to millions of Iranians who are in dire need for electricity for their homes and for their factories, for their economy, basically, right? Because Iran they have shortage of electricity. So when you demand such an impossible thing from Iran, you know that they will reject it. And once they reject it, you will say, you're not agreeing to a deal. You don't want a deal. And I gave you 6 months for a deal. And now see what happened? Israelis are bombing you. So come back to the negotiation table, because you don't, like, the war could expand and this could lead into catastrophic consequences for you. Come to the negotiation table again. But Iran was on the negotiation table. It didn't withdraw from the negotiation table. Those who withdrew from the negotiation table are the ones who bombed Iran. And when we say those who bombed Iran, in this case Israel, this has not happened without the approval and the green light and the consent of the United States. So on one hand, you say, I'm talking, on the other hand, you're bombing. So in this case, I think the situation is going to be very, I would say, counterproductive for the Iranians to go to talks now under such circumstances. Either the bombing should stop and an agreement should be made, which is more logical for the Iranians and for the Americans in the region, or this is going to be war. But rest assured, as I told you in the past stream, this is not only about the nuclear program of Iran. This is about the regime, the government, the system in Iran. The main goal is complete regime change, the complete annihilation of this system, creating chaos in Iran, and create sectarian and ethnic tensions, which could include the MEK, the Mojahidi Khalq, some Azeri proxies probably, because you have a big Azeri community inside Iran, and probably, I'm just saying, some of the Kurdish forces could be used again against Iran in this case. So my understanding of this is the United States and Israel are not interested in a deal with Iran, because a deal with Iran saves the political system there. And this could be seen as opportunity for Iran to reorganize its domestic and internal matters and find a better strategy to immunize itself against foreign intervention, or to keep its independent foreign policy approach. And this is something that the Americans and the Israelis will not tolerate in West Asia. They have already eliminated Syria. They have eliminated Libya. They have eliminated all the state and non-state actors in the region who could have played an independent role in the region, right? The only power left in the region which presents a challenge to the US dominance is Iran. So they will not leave Iran alone, giving it an opportunity to find different ways to restructure what used to be called the axis of resistance. See? Therefore, their goal is very clear. They have a vision, they're determined, they're focused, and they want regime change inside Iran. And In this case, I think it is important to note that this type of false articles or false narratives spread in the press aims at manipulating basically not only the Iranian system, the government, but also the Iranian people. Because it is important to note that the Iranian people are very educated, they're very smart, they're politically mature, they understand what is going on inside their country and outside their country, in the region and abroad. It's not like in the United States. If you ask 9 out of 10 people, they don't know anything about what's going on around the world. People there are well informed about the global geopolitical issues, and I have seen many examples of Iranians, whether inside Iran or in other foreign countries, basically, who could have basically an issue against or against a beef against their own government because they don't like an Islamic government, for example. They don't like a dress code for women. They don't like that it's a conservative country. They don't like many things. Some people don't like the government because of economic reasons. But this existential pressure against Iran has, in my opinion, created a different environment among the Iranians. Now we have the people who support the Shah, they will never change their mind. And I don't think they're the majority. But the people who are in opposition of the government in Iran but don't support the Shah, I have seen many examples of them saying, look, I saw a video of a woman, basically, she says, build a nuke, and she's not covered, like she's not wearing a hijab, and this is inside Iran. She is one of the liberal women in the street, and she's calling for building a nuke because she feels there is an existential threat against her own country. And as I mentioned in a past stream, Iran is different from Syria. Persia has been a nation, has been a civilization, has been an empire, right? And the people's conscious and culture is deep rooted into this history, culture, and civilization, and many of the experiences they have had in the past thousands of years in the region. So this is an accumulation of awareness embedded in the memories of the people in Iran. Unlike in Syria, Syria is a new concept. Like there were empires passing through Syria, but at no point there was the Syrian Arab Republic or Syria as a nation state started in 1946, 48, after the independence of Syria from the French occupation. So the people didn't have this collective memory, what it means to belong to a nation state, to have a national identity. That is why it was easier to break Syria into ethnic and sectarian lines, just like in Lebanon, because the people feel that their identity is affiliated with their sectarian and religious or ethnic identities rather than the national identity, and that is Syria. This is not the case in Iran. Iran is going to be more difficult for them to divide and conquer. Maybe they could play on other issues like as I said, the Azeri Kurdish, for example, component, but most of the Persians will not tolerate a foreign intervention and bombardment of their own country, seeing people getting killed with thousands or tens of thousands of them because they have a beef against their government. This is just my understanding. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is how I see it. Now, our friend Squirrel, I call it Squirrel, but I know that these analyses are depressing, but we are showing, going to show you guys depressing things. However, we take what is important for us, right? We take as we say, the butter of this conversation. And the butter of this conversation is, when I read this news to you or this analysis, you have to understand that this is, in my opinion, what the Squirrel is basically saying, that this is what the Americans and the Israelis want in Iran, not that it is necessarily going to happen, right? So let's start. This is the same kind of false propaganda they have been doing for the past 2 years. Whenever you see something like this published, and it is always sourced to some anonymous officials, they are doing propaganda to cover for decisions that has already been made. Khamenei is a target, and they are going to assassinate him soon unless Iran immediately establishes deterrence by not only matching but going beyond what the Israelis and US have done so far. Target, and of course, this is not my words for the Stasis or for those who are following Syriana Analysis and trying to find me saying something that could incriminate me. I'm not calling for violence, guys. I'm just reading this post, and these are analysis, right? So the owner of this platform says that Israel has to target and eliminate, Iran has to target and eliminate top Israeli officials, close the Strait of Hormuz, target Gulf oil infrastructure and US military bases and settlements. They have chosen total state collapse for Iran, and this is the only way to stop it. All these fake leaks, the Trump tweets about a deal, taking responsibility, not taking responsibility, it's all meant for public consumption as propaganda. In the background, the decision has already been made. It was made long ago. This is a total war. Exactly. I think that is the case. I think that they have already made a decision to topple the Iranian government. Therefore, the Iranian government has to act accordingly, according to this analysis, and that is to match or outmatch the retaliation patterns of the Israelis to force them to stop. If they don't force them to stop, means you have created a climate of war of attrition. It is going to become a long cycle of violence against Iran and, of course, against Israel, but I will address that later in this conversation. I just want to thank our friend Gulnara for the super sticker. Thank you very much, my friend, for your generous support. So our friend Max Blumenthal also has a similar understanding of what is going on at the current moment. And he says, and gigantic US Air Force deployment is currently underway with over 20 aerial refueling tankers moving across the ocean, along with many more military assets as Netanyahu pushes Trump to join Israel's war on Iran. I am certain that Trump doesn't want the US directly engaged in the war. I don't agree with, of course, respectfully, with Max Blumenthal. I don't think that he doesn't want to get engaged into this war. I think he wants to. However, that he says, I'm certain that Trump doesn't want the US directly engaged in the war, that he fantasizes about winning a Nobel Prize by ending it, and that in any case, he is too mentally lazy to manage such a conflict. It is also clear that his base has no desire to fight any neocon wars of choice for Israel. America First influencers like Tucker Carlson and MTG are now escalating their opposition because they know that it will sabotage what is left of Trump's domestic agenda. But there may be little they can do. The fact is that Trump is bought and bossed by the Zionist billionaire class, and after 2 assassination attempts, he is reluctant to defy a mob boss like Miriam Adelson or the malevolent forces she represents. Instead, Trump trembles before the Israeli assets in his camp. He is like a deer in the headlights of a Merkava tank. And he is not only weak, but delusional enough to believe he can change the subject to immigration or some other culture war fixation after acceding to Netanyahu's maniacal demands, which means that in the next 48 hours, Trump could greenlight a psychotic regime change war that no country in the world other than Israel wants, which will multiply the human misery of the region 100-fold. Tank the global economy, place a target on American backs, and ensure him a place among history's greatest losers. Now, I told him the escalatory patterns in the past 1.5 years indicate that the US objections are a smokescreen. Israel will escalate enough for the US to intervene. Tommy is not on the side of Iran if its goal is to reestablish deterrence. He says another trigger for US intervention could be Israel losing escalatory dominance as its air defenses continue to erode. Yeah, I think he has also a point, because what I was trying to say is that Iran doesn't have the escalatory dominance in this conflict yet. But he says if they have that, then this could also trigger a US intervention. So I don't know. What do you think about this, guys? Do you think that Trump doesn't really want to go into war against Iran? And they are dragged by Israel and his billionaire donors, Zionist billionaire donors in the United States, or Donald Trump is basically in bed with Israel in this case. Now, just to be clear, in this case also, Iran yesterday responded in a very harsh way, and they have hit many vital interests of Israel. right? Including energy resources, including civilian infrastructure as well. However, what they have failed so far is to target any senior Israeli officials. And Israel recently, only in the past few hours, they have killed Iran's intelligence chief in Tehran. And this has happened yesterday on Sunday. His name was Mohammad Kazemi. He was the head of intelligence of the Revolutionary Guard Corps, and he was killed alongside Hassan Muhaqiq, his deputy, and Mohsen Bagheri, a third intelligence officer, during an attack on the capital. So you have 3 senior intelligence officers in the IRGC getting killed together, assassinated together in a meeting. I think this is a different level of penetration of the Iranian security apparatuses, right? Just like they did with Hezbollah. And this is very, very dangerous. I think there are 2 things more important than the military power, and that is communication. You have to secure your communication, internal communication, and the secrecy of your meetings. So if they know where the meeting is, and they can target them and kill them, there is someone then is giving information to the Mossad, to the Israelis, right? Therefore, in this case, this type of attacks against the Iranian military officers and senior nuclear scientists is a very bad image for Iran. And do they have the will to also kill or assassinate their opponents? I don't know. We have not seen an attempt yet against senior Israeli officials. That could come. I'm not sure. But for the moment, it doesn't really look good. Now, Israel also is doing something different on a psychological level against the people of Iran, or the people of Tehran specifically, right? And this is basically, they're doing what they did with Lebanon. They basically post a map in Persian this time, and they say that Israel issued an evacuation order for District 3 of Tehran. Evacuate Tehran's District 3 immediately. Israeli forces will soon strike military infrastructure in Tehran's District 3, similar to recent attacks around the capital. Residents, workers, and visitors in the marked area are urged to leave immediately for their safety. This is according to the Israeli forces. So what they do basically, if there is one military, let's say, installation here, let's say on the eastern side of this map, the red one, they map and they draw an entire neighborhood here, and they ask everybody to leave. And once they ask everybody to leave, this spreads panic, right? Because you're just normal civilian, you're just normal person living your life in an apartment in Tehran, and then they start bombing the entire neighborhood. So if I'm saying Israel is going to copy what they did to the suburbs of Beirut in Tehran, which means they're going to copy also the Gaza doctrine, right? Which is completely destroy and decimate the neighborhoods. And this is directly targeted against civilians. Because first, you're spreading panic among them, you're urging them to leave their apartments. Where do they go, basically, right? And then if you destroy their homes, you create sentiments from these people against their government, that because of the policy of your government, look what is happening to your homes, to your future, to your family. Basically, you're homeless now. But if I'm saying Iran responds in the same way against Israel and draws maps and say, the people in neighborhood 3 in Tel Aviv should evacuate because we are going to completely destroy this neighborhood. What do you think is going to happen? The entire world will condemn Iran, right? Therefore, if the Iranian government thinks that there is anyone except them value the lives of their own people, they're mistaken. And if Israel kills 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 or 100,000 civilians in the next weeks in Tehran, nobody will blink an eye. And if there are powers like China and Russia bring the issue in front of the UN Security Council, the resolution will be vetoed. However, if Iran does the same thing, for an argument's sake, they have drawn a map and said, guys in the District 3 in Tel Aviv, evacuate because we're going to bomb. And they bombed the neighborhood and completely decimated. And in the discourse, they killed probably 1,000, 100, let's say 100, only 100 civilians. The US will bring the issue in front of the UN Security Council, and the Russians and the Chinese will find a hard time to veto it because it will be a very bad look. Are you vetoing a resolution that is aimed at protecting civilians? The US can do all these things. Nobody cares because it's an empire. Its image is tarnished or untarnished. They don't care about their reputation any longer. They just did in Gaza the unthinkable, and they're just moving on with their lives, right? Has anyone bringing the people who committed all these atrocities in Gaza in front of courts? Something happened to someone? Somebody was held responsible, accountable? Nothing. So this is a really difficult game for Iran. And I'm not here to, philosophize or teach anyone anything, but it's really, really serious issue for Iran. I'm just checking what can we show you in this case. This is Yoav Gallant saying, giving us some lecture about the importance of this war.
אנחנו נמצאים אחרי שהתקבלה החלטה, אחרי שמדינת ישראל הלכה למבצע, מאותו רגע כולנו מאוחדים, עם אחד שמביא את התוצאה. ברגע שהגענו לתוך המערכה הזאת, לא יכולים לעצור.
אבל תפקיד הצבא, יכולת להתמודד לישראל למערך ההגנה האווירי.
יש לנו יכולת להתמודד, ובעיקר יש לנו גם יכולת לגבות מחיר. זה אותו מסדרון שדיברתי עליו כבר בקיץ 23. אמרתי לצה"ל, אתה לא יכול להשתמש רק בחימושים ארוכי טווח, מטווחים רחוקים. אנחנו צריכים לפתוח מסדרון, ועל כל טיל שנופל במדינת ישראל להיות מסוגלים לגבות מחיר מאוד כבד. הם יבינו את זה. ולכן זה מה שהולך וקורה עכשיו. יש מסדרון, יש יכולת להגיע לטהרן, ואם צריך גם למקומות אחרים, זה הדבר המכריע. כשאתה מתחיל במשהו, אתה הולך עד שאתה מנצח, עד שאתה מסיים את המשימה, ומחסל את מה שצריך, ובהיבט הזה צריך לגמור את המבצע, יהיה אשר יהיה.
So whatever it takes, right? Someone like Yoav Gallant doesn't come to public, to the press, and spew words that he doesn't know the meaning behind it. There are so many officials, other officials, I don't really build on their statements, but whatever it takes to achieve the goals. So what are the goals? Denuclearization and regime change. So what is going to be the means to achieve these goals? Israel can, of course, create a very high cost for Iran. And however, they will also receive a very high cost from Iran. But in this case, the Israelis have two advantages. One advantage is the nuclear weapons that they have, at least 70 warheads. And secondly is the United States and the collective West are all behind Israel, whether we like it or not. On the other side, Iranians do not have the entire world or the entire, let's say, BRICS coalition in their back. India, for example, is on the side of Israel. China is condemning verbally, but doesn't do much to, protect Iran. And they're not obliged to. I mean, there is no defense pact also between them. Russia is the same. Russia waited forever, basically, before they supplied S-400s to Iran. They waited forever before they gave them the MiG, I think, 35 or something. So the Russians now say that we are ready to mediate between between the Israelis and Iranians to find a peaceful solution or something. And I would advise the Russians to stay out of this. Because if their mediation was like the same one they did between Syria and Turkey in the past, then Iranians will pay a very high price later. Because the Russians play with the rules of the game, and the rules of the game are set by the collective West or by the United States, and it is meant to serve the interests of the empire. And in this case, what they're basically trying to do is to stop the hostilities, right? But they're smart enough to know that the Americans aren't interested in de-escalation in the region. They're interested in the capitulation of Iran. And the Russians know that the Iranians will not capitulate and give up everything. So what are they basically mediating? If the Russians and the Chinese do not support Iran like the Americans are supporting Israel, I'm just talking now military analysis, then they will be next. They will be next. And Iran is very important for the Eurasian economic integration. And once the empire takes over, or if the empire takes over Iran, what are they going to do with Iran? They will privatize the entire economy. They will suck dry the Iranian natural resources. They will privatize everything. And they will limit the oil sales to China to slow down its economic growth, basically. So they will lose the Middle East completely. It's in their interest, geopolitical interest, to help Iran. Not to say mediation, but they're not doing that. So sometimes I wonder if they if they calculate, I'm sure they're very smart, and they know that this is not something that they will stop in Iran, by the way. In the past, Netanyahu said, if you take out the Soviet Union, then this will be like there will be lasting peace. And then he said about Iraq, and then about Libya, and then about Syria, and now about Iran. And after that, they will come after Pakistan. And if they come after Pakistan, they would kill the also one of the economic lifelines of China. If Pakistan is gone and Iran is gone, then the region, not only the Middle East, but also the Indian Ocean and the Southern Caucasus areas, everywhere will be basically dominated by the Western trade routes. And that's why in the previous stream, I said, and I warned, and I say again to the Armenians, if you're an Armenian watching this, you should be very, very worried about this war against Iran. If Iran is weakened enough or loses control to its northern borders, Azerbaijan will roll into Armenia very easily. Azerbaijan wants to open a corridor between Azerbaijan and Nakhichevan and Turkey, right? It's called the, what was the name of the corridor? Azerbaijan corridor. Sometimes I forget names. Corridor. The Zangezur corridor. I will just show you this map. This is not, of course, it can be that the map is not accurate 100%. This is just for illustration reasons for you guys. So this is the green to blue line to the red line going to Turkey, right? And they want to open a corridor on the borders of Armenia here. And Armenia and Iran are objecting this. If I'm saying Iran loses its control over the northern borders, or weakened to some extent, Azerbaijan will roll into the southern parts of Armenia, and they will establish here a buffer zone or a zone to build this corridor, which goes from Baku all the way passing through Armenia, Nakhichevan to Turkey. And this will compete, of course, or destroy some of the trade routes of Iran. So Armenians have to be very, very careful about this. And they should know that if Iran doesn't emerge victorious from this or weakened to a certain extent, then they are going to be a victim. And just again to show you this map again, to show you the foolishness of whoever has given political advice to the Iranian government in the 2022 war of Azerbaijan against a 2020 and 2023 war of Azerbaijan against the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh, right? So in this region, there were lots of Armenians, and they have occupied all this region here called Nagorno-Karabakh in the past. So they also eventually controlled the borders with Iran. When Azerbaijan attacked Nagorno-Karabakh in this western part, Iran sided with Azerbaijan, saying that they believe that Nagorno-Karabakh is legally belong to Azerbaijan. And what they did, basically, they shot their own feet by coming on the side of Azerbaijan. And they have given the Azerbaijanis as regional or the geographical access on the borders with Iran. And this is where the Israelis came, and they have built their so-called smart villages to spy inside, probably saying inside Iran. So sometimes politicians can make fatal mistakes. But when we point out to these things, then they will come and tell you, do you really know better than the political? No, I don't know better than any politician because I'm not a practiced politician. But sometimes I'm just saying that if you put the map of control in front of you, sometimes you can read a few things. And if a politician makes a mistake, I think they deserve to be criticized. So I will show you a video now, because this is important to deliver a message to other type of people in the West. This is the Israeli settler spokesman, Rabbi Yishai Fleischer. He says Gazans should be sent on boats to Europe to clear it out for Israel, and anyone who stays should be declared an enemy combatant and killed. He says, send them to Cyprus, send them to Spain, send them to southern France or to Ireland.
And I said it very clearly. Blow a hole in the thing. If not,
bring it on. Okay, I got that.
If not, bring some boats. Send them to Cyprus. Send them to Spain. Send them to southern France.
Spain is happy to take.
That's right. Send them to Ireland. Their beloved friends in Ireland.
And then could they come back after the war?
Wait a minute.
Because the Syrians get to go back.
Wait a minute. Yeah. There's millions of them in tents right now.
But they have the right.
I'll tell them that Noam says that they have the right to come back. Okay, no problem. Anyway, the bottom line is that first thing I would do is I would ensure that non-combatants leave the scene.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. Leave the scene on boats. Leave the scene walking. Leave the scene to Syria. Leave the scene to Jordan. We'll make a passageway to Jordan. We'll help you survive this war. All people that stay there in Gaza are therefore deemed combatants, and we will now fight a good old clean war, make sure that no innocent civilians are hurt. They're out, just like in all the other conflicts around the world. It's amazing that the world has not even given, everybody talks about this genocide, so help them out. Help them, let them do what they did in Syria and in Ukraine. Help them. No,
help them.
Nobody wants to do that because they want to use them as pawns. They want to use them. The world wants to use them as human shields, so that Israel doesn't do what it's supposed to do. Now, you take care of these refugees, you give them a life. Then you destroy the Hamas. Then you take sovereign control over the land. Then you let in people who want to live in the Jewish state as residents.
So you annex Gaza?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
Not an annex, full up.
Of course. It's a tiny, but it's a sandbox. It's a tiny piece of land. It's 400 square kilometers. It's a joke. It's a town.
Is Gaza?
It's a township in America. It's nothing.
Is Gaza considered?
I think where I'm from is bigger than Gaza.
Is Gaza considered religiously?
It's historically. You use the word religiously, and it's not
important.
Historically,
in the same way as Judea and Samaria.
Absolutely, we had times that we controlled it, and other times where Philistines and other entities controlled it. But certainly, there were many times in Jewish history that Israel controlled.
Now that's historically. What about religiously? Does God
religiously? It's part of Israel. That's all there is to it. It's not. It doesn't have to be confusing. It's simple.
I don't want to discuss the content of this because it's too controversial, especially where I live in. However, I want to ask a question to the people who support Israel unconditionally in the West, and they reject the notion of receiving any refugees or migrants in their own countries. And I'm talking about, of course, right-wing populist groups who reject categorically to receive any refugees or migrants in their own countries. How do you reconcile with the idea of supporting Israel unconditionally and the wars which Israel initiated or urged the United States to initiate, for example, Iraq war, regime change operation in Syria? Millions of people fled their countries, became refugees in Europe. How do you reconcile with that fact? This is a serious question. If you're a right-wing populist, or call it whatever you want yourself, identitarian, nationalist, etc., how do you reconcile with the fact that Israel is creating this refugee crisis, and they're saying basically, let Europe receive them. They're only 2 million. And you in Europe, you say that we are under attack. This is what you say. We are under attack. Our identity is eroded. Our culture is eroded. We're being overwhelmed with refugees. There is like a war against Europe. This is about, taking over the country. This is an invasion. We want to keep Europe Christian. All these things. I hear it all the time. So how do you reconcile with yourself supporting a war that will lead into a mass influx of refugees in your own countries, and then continue supporting Israel? It doesn't make sense to me, at least. Doesn't make sense. One of our friends says, Hussein Suleiman, بدها طولة بال خيي كيفورك. And Simon says, من وين بدها تجي طولة البال؟ والله من وين بدها تجي طولة البال يا خيي؟ يعني أحيانا الواحد بده هيك يشق شعراته، يعني يشد شعراته من كمية الهبل اللي عم بيصير بالمنطقة من الشعوب ومن السياسيين، يعني ما نرحم حدا. Anyways, let's go back to English. Now, America's best man, who is حابب شعراتي هي والله حابب شعراتنا أنا شبت والله. Thank you, Canaan Civilization. I didn't know you. Very good analysis. I'm sorry, guys, that I'm not able most of the time to check the comments. And while you're watching this, I would really appreciate it if you hit the likes button, like thumbs up, because this could reach to more people if you like this video, and leave a comment. And subscribe to this YouTube channel if you're not yet. I would really appreciate that as well. Now, the man that they want to replace the current government is, of course, Reza Pahlavi. And he was on BBC, and even the BBC journalist, like, imagine how much despicable you have to be that even the BBC journalist couldn't tolerate your BS.
Are you actually saying then that Israel bombing your country, civilians in Iran being killed, is a positive thing?
I'm not saying that the targeting was meant to hurt the Iranian people. The targeting was meant to basically neutralize the regime threat. Clearly, I don't think that it was an intention of the Israeli government to attack Iranian civilians.
Are you actually saying?
So, guys, it is Iran's government's fault that they're bombing civilian neighborhoods in Tehran. And this is the problem with the so-called Iranian opposition, and before that, the so-called Syrian opposition, and before that, the so-called Cuban opposition. Those oppositionists who were exiled in the United States, in Qatar, in Turkey, in Saudi Arabia, in different major imperial players around the world, you cannot really trust them. How can you trust someone living in the United States? They say it's not California, he lives in Miami. And this is what I was told after yesterday's stream, that this guy is basically being groomed in the United States to replace a world leader. How can you, as an Iranian, accept somebody like him? And look, I'm not Iranian. I don't want to intervene in the Iranian domestic affairs, but I want to give a simple, very friendly and brotherly advice to, if you're an Iranian and watching this, it is very healthy for any society to have an opposition against their government. And I am all for free and fair elections, and especially the women's rights. And I have criticized Iran in the past for imposing certain dress code, and I was called different names. Oh, what are you doing? You're helping the Zionists. No. If your home has a broken glass, you have to fix that glass, and don't allow the outsiders to jump in from your window. And this is one of the things. My brother, we are in the 21st century, 2025. You cannot impose, in my opinion, a dress code on a woman. Like impose, right? Like modesty is something, but impose a headscarf, for example, is something else. This is just my opinion. And I understand many people have grievances. But also, my humble opinion is, do not put your hands in the hands of imperialist powers thinking that they have your best interest at their heart. Look what they did to Syria. All these so-called oppositionists who day and night said that this is a revolution for the Syrian people, and now that they reach to power, are they serving the Syrian people or are they serving the multinational corporations? Are they serving the Syrian people or are they serving the US empire? Are they serving the Syrian people or are they serving Israel? The answers are clear. The answers are clear. To the extent that the regime in Damascus now, they have declared this. Sorry, not this one. The other one. Just a second. So they have declared that Syrian official, we don't object intercepting launches from Iran in Syrian skies. There is coordination with Israel. So this is a regime which came after a successful CIA-led regime change operation. As our friend Matt Kennard said, removing Assad was key to US-UK Zionist plot to crush the whole region under their imperial boot. Netanyahu waited until Al-Qaeda ISIS veteran Jolani was installed in Damascus before launching the regime change war against Iran he's been pushing for 30 years. Tehran is the final domino, 100%. And look how Israeli influencers, for example, this guy who is an Israeli propagandist basically, or doing propaganda for Israel day and night, he calls Jolani Syria's president. So Syria's president, according to him, has announced that Syrian airspace is now open to intercept Iranian drones and missiles. Incredible. And I said, the president is the founder of the Al-Qaeda offshoot in Syria. Those are the same people who cry day and night about Islamic terrorism. But when this Islamic terrorism serves them, then they want to legitimize it. I have warned this for a long time. That Israel is not an angel, guys. Those who they thought that Israel will come and save the minorities. After the regime change in Syria, I saw a shift in some people's opinions and their affiliations, whatever, and they started opening up to Israeli accounts on social media, thinking that Israel will come and save the minorities, the Alawites, the Christians, etc., right? And I warned them. I said, what are you doing? Do you really think that Israel cares about you as a minority? They have participated in creating these conditions in your own country by colluding with Turkey and restarting the regime change and bringing Jolani to power. I have received messages from Israelis. They claim to be just ordinary people, and I don't think that they're ordinary people. This is just my opinion. Basically telling me that, look, regime is gone. Now the minorities are under threat. We have to be friends. Like you are because they see me as a minority, because I'm an ethnic Armenian born and raised in Syria. So I have a big platform, and they reach me out with the hope that I would collaborate with them or cooperate with them. And I don't answer to their messages. I see the requests, I don't answer them. But then one of them started sending me messages on Patreon. How would they do that? Basically, they have to pledge some support. So I think somebody pledged like a $2 support per month. So this person can DM me on Patreon because they want to communicate and say, like, look, the axis of resistance is gone, Bashar is gone, minorities are under threat, we have to cooperate. So I have to give a good impression about Israel, right, on my social media account. But I'm not idiot. I'm not an idiot. And I know the role Israel played in starting the regime change war and in finalizing the regime change war. You can fool maybe some ordinary people, but I have done 13 years, 14 years of extensive work reading and analyzing and following and monitoring the Syrian war. So what I want to say is you cannot really buy me in this case. I think that would be my message for them, those who are following this stream. Anyways, guys, this week on Wednesday, our friend Sharmin Narwani is coming to Syriana Analysis to discuss this geopolitical escalation in the region. And next Monday, so this Wednesday is going to be the 18th of June. And on next Monday, going to be the 23rd of June, highly likely our friend Richard Medhurst could come also to be the guest, or let's have a conversation together. So if you're looking forward to that, I would really appreciate it, guys, if you subscribe to this YouTube channel, hit the like button, and simply leave a comment, because all these things help. And if you like to do more, support the work I'm doing, the independent work I'm doing, you can become a patron. For example, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. The link is scrolling on the screen. If you don't like to use Patreon, there are different other means in the description below. And I will see you tomorrow, inshallah. Peace be upon you, upon your families. Salam.